Would you stay silent? Or let revenge speak for you? Welcome to the stories on Shattered Vengeance. Step into a world where love turns dangerous, revenge feels inevitable, and every story drags you deeper into the shadows of desire, betrayal, and the human heart. Let's begin today's story. The real estate office smelled like fresh coffee and desperation. Thursday afternoon, 3:42 p.m., and I sat in my car across the street watching Mom sign listing papers with Sandra Cho, the most aggressive realtor in the historic district. Through the window, I could see glossy photos of my Victorian house spread across Sandra's desk, the 1889 home I'd spent 3 years restoring. It's a family heritage property, Mom's voice carried through Sandra's open window. 5 generations in our family. My daughter lives there now, but I'm the actual owner. She just maintains it. We need to sell before the tax burden becomes unmanageable. Sandra was nodding, taking notes, already calculating her commission on what Mom claimed was a $1.2 million listing. Behind them, I could see Dad reviewing the marketing strategy. Open house scheduled for Sunday, buyer previews starting tomorrow. My phone buzzed. Historic Preservation Board, urgent notice. Miss Julia Morrison? This is Catherine Wells, Director of the City Historic Preservation Board. We've been alerted to a pending sale listing for 847 Ashford Street. Our records show that property has landmark status with significant transfer restrictions. Before any sale proceeds, we need to verify current ownership and ensure compliance with preservation ordinances. I kept my voice low. I'm the sole owner. Property deeded to me by my grandmother in 2020. I've completed 3 years of historically accurate restoration using preservation grants. My mother has no ownership interest and no authority to list the property for sale. Professional silence. Then, your mother just submitted documentation to a realtor claiming she holds title as family trustee. That's fraudulent representation on a protected historic property. We're required to investigate any irregular claims on landmark buildings. She's also scheduling an open house for Sunday and collecting offers from buyers who think they're purchasing available historic real estate. I pulled up the listing Sandra had already posted online. Live for less than an hour, already 17 interested parties. I'm forwarding my deed, restoration permits, and preservation grant documentation now. Send everything immediately. If your mother is misrepresenting ownership on landmark property, we're shutting down this sale and contacting law enforcement. Catherine's tone hardened. Historic property fraud is serious. These buildings are irreplaceable community assets. We don't tolerate ownership schemes that threaten preservation. I hung up, sent the documentation, then forwarded copies to the city attorney and the real estate licensing board. Time to end Mom's heritage property fraud. The Preservation Board office was elegant, appropriately housed in a restored 1920s building. Catherine Wells was 60-something, had the bearing of someone who'd spent decades protecting architectural history from people who viewed old buildings as profit opportunities. She spread documents across the polished oak table. My grandmother's deed transferring the property solely to me, my restoration permits, my preservation grant awards, and then Mom's fraudulent family trustee documents claiming she held title on behalf of Morrison family heritage interests. Your mother created fake trustee papers. Catherine's finger traced the forgery. She claims your grandmother established a family trust before her death, naming your mother as trustee with authority to manage and sell family properties. Except your grandmother's estate records show no such trust existed. Mom's been telling people for 3 years that I'm staying in the family home rather than owning it. I showed Catherine family text messages where Mom referred to the house as our property and discussed eventually selling when Julia moves out. She's constructed a narrative where she's the actual owner and I'm just the temporary occupant. And the realtor believed her because she provided convincing documentation. Catherine pulled up the listing. $1.2 million asking price. Sandra Cho's commission would be $72,000. She's already scheduled showings and collected contact information from 17 potential buyers, all of whom think they're viewing legitimate historic property available for purchase, when actually they're viewing protected landmark property owned by someone who never authorized the sale. Catherine was already on her phone. I need an emergency cease and desist on the 847 Ashford Street listing. Historic Preservation Fraud Investigation. She provided case details. And contact Sandra Cho. She needs to cancel all showings immediately and notify potential buyers the listing is fraudulent. She hung up, looked at me with something like sympathy. This is going to get ugly. Your mother's fraud creates liability for everyone involved. The realtor, the buyers, potentially the title company. They'll all be looking for someone to blame. As long as they're not blaming me. They won't be. Your ownership is ironclad and your preservation work is impeccable. You're the victim here. Catherine pulled up my restoration records. 3 years of historically accurate renovation. Period-appropriate materials. Expert craftsmanship. You've done everything right. Your mother's attempting to steal that and profit from your work. Exactly. The cease and desist hit Sandra Cho's office at 4:47 p.m. I wasn't there, but Catherine called with updates. Sandra was threatening to sue everyone. Mom for fraud, the Preservation Board for interference, even me for family property disputes. Her $72,000 commission had evaporated and she was furious. The 17 potential buyers received notifications that the listing was fraudulent. Several immediately contacted attorneys. One had already written a $50,000 earnest money check based on Mom's representations. That check became evidence of fraud rather than down payment. Mom was contacted at 5:15 p.m. by city investigators. She claimed misunderstanding and family disagreement, rather than acknowledging fraud. Dad tried to explain they'd thought the property was jointly owned through family heritage, despite never being on any deed. By 6 p.m., the Real Estate Licensing Board had opened an investigation into whether Sandra had performed adequate due diligence. The Preservation Board filed a formal complaint with the city attorney. And Mom's fake trustee documents were being analyzed for forgery. My phone buzzed with family calls. I answered only my Aunt Linda, who'd apparently been promised a share of the sale proceeds. Julia, what's going on? Your mother said the family house was being sold and we'd each get $80,000. Now she's saying there's problems with the title. The house is mine. Grandma left it to me solely in 2020. Mom created fake documents claiming she's a trustee with authority to sell. She listed my house without permission, scheduled an open house and collected buyer interest for property she doesn't own. I felt tired explaining this. The Preservation Board discovered the fraud during routine verification of historic property transfers. But your mother said. Mom lied. She's been lying for 3 years, telling people I'm just staying in the family home when actually I own it and have spent $240,000 on historically accurate restoration. I pulled up my financial records. I used preservation grants, my own savings and a renovation loan in my name only. Mom has 0 investment and 0 ownership. Aunt Linda was quiet. Then, she told me we'd all get money from the sale. She told you that because she planned to pocket $1.2 million from selling my house and distributing portions to family members to make it look legitimate. None of you would have received anything except stolen money. Oh God. The city attorney moved quickly. Mom was charged with fraud, forgery, and attempted theft of real property. Sandra Cho faced licensing board sanctions for insufficient due diligence. She'd accepted Mom's trustee documents without verifying them against actual estate records. The potential buyer who'd written the earnest money check sued Mom for fraud and intentional misrepresentation. That case settled for $75,000. Mom had to liquidate her retirement accounts to pay it. The Preservation Board issued a formal report documenting the attempted fraud and strengthening protocols for verifying ownership on landmark properties. My house was added to the enhanced monitoring list. Any future sale attempts would trigger automatic investigation. Mom wasn't criminally prosecuted. The city attorney determined that first-time offenders without criminal history typically received deferred prosecution for property fraud cases. Mom got 2 years supervised release, mandatory restitution and permanent restrictions on real estate transactions. But the civil judgments destroyed her financially. The earnest money buyer settlement. Sandra Cho's lawsuit for damage to her professional reputation. Legal fees. By the time everything settled, Mom and Dad had filed bankruptcy. I never spoke to Mom again. She sent letters claiming she'd been trying to help the family, and that I was selfish for not understanding her intentions. I returned them unopened. Dad tried apologizing. explained that Mom had convinced him the trustee documents were legitimate, that Grandma had secretly established the family trust. I blocked his calls. He'd participated in listing my house and planning to spend my money. 2 years later, my Victorian house remains exactly what I restored it to be, an 1889 landmark property maintained to preservation standards. I completed the final restoration phase last year. Original tile work in the kitchen, period-accurate fixtures throughout, historically correct exterior paint colors. The Preservation Board gave me their annual Restoration Award. Catherine Wells presented it at a ceremony where she mentioned diplomatically that the house had overcome challenges to its preservation, but was now secure as a protected landmark. I ran into Aunt Linda at a community event. She apologized for believing Mom's promises about sale proceeds. I should have questioned it. Should have asked to see actual documents. She looked genuinely remorseful. Your mother was convincing. She was committing fraud. That requires being convincing. I didn't say it harshly. Linda had been deceived, not complicit. The important thing is the house is protected now. Enhanced monitoring. Any future fraud attempts will trigger immediate investigation. You've done beautiful work with the restoration. Thank you. That's what matters. Preserving the house Grandma trusted me to protect. On quiet evenings now, I sit on my restored Victorian porch. Original woodwork, period-appropriate colors, historically accurate details that took 3 years and $240,000 to achieve. The house Mom tried to sell for $1.2 million using fake trustee documents. The property I own. The landmark I've preserved. The home Grandma left specifically to me because she knew Mom would try exactly what she attempted. Mom listed it as family heritage property. Scheduled an open house. Collected buyer interest from 17 potential purchasers. But the Preservation Board investigated routine ownership verification on landmark properties. The realtor's commission check became evidence of fraud rather than legitimate sale proceeds. And Mom's heritage property scheme collapsed into fraud charges and financial devastation. The house is still mine. Still historically preserved. Still protected by landmark status and enhanced monitoring protocols. The open house never happened. The buyers never toured. The sale never closed. And my Victorian home remains exactly what Grandma intended. Preserved architectural history, not liquidated real estate. The Preservation Board found the forgeries. The deed showed sole ownership. The restoration records proved my investment. And Mom's fraudulent listing became a cautionary tale about attempting to profit from someone else's historic preservation work. The house stands as it has since 1889, protected, restored, and owned by the person who actually earned that right through years of careful historical preservation. And that's worth more than any fraudulent family heritage sale could ever justify.